But they both look cool.
Yeah, I mean,
You're glad they're on my shelf.
yes, I am very glad they're on your shelf and not my shelf. Well, welcome to another episode of Power Bourbon, and tonight is really Brian and I's favorite type of night, which means Chuck was in charge of sending samples.
Mine too. Yeah. So like tonight is this perfect like trifecta of Chuck paid for the bourbon, so it's good bourbon, and it's a rye. Like, what more do you want?
I mean, it is a valid statement because anybody that watches the channel for a long period of time thinks Chuck spends a lot of money on a rye. This can't be correct. But supposedly he did. And we've got two ryes right in front of us that we have no idea what they are. But by this time you will, because of my amazing video editing. Took a year and a half to get there. But yeah, so we're gonna give these a try. So all Brian and I know is this is number 71 and this is number 72. Yes, Chuck has now sent 72 samples. That's pretty impressive.
More than that, but I just find it handy to continue the sequence. The only thing I will tell you about these, they're rye whiskey. Two, they're both over $100.
Oh.
So I think value needs to be a discussion here tonight. You guys love, that's your favorite topic, particularly Brian. What would you pay for this? Is the juice worth the squeeze, as TJ said one time, I think, on a video.
Yep. That was a long time ago, back before we had to do our lists and then our March Madness and everything like that, which we enjoyed doing.
Well, and you just let the cat out of the bag stating you had spent $100 or more on these. And I was actually going to say Chuck has allegedly spent a lot of money on these because I'm just not totally sure he really has. And honestly, like, even when he's like, I spent $100, I'm like, okay, did you walk away with a $35 rye and then something else that got over $100?
Well, I was going to say, as soon as I smelled them, I know they were expensive because, like, they are delicious noses. 71 is like juicy fruit, bubblegum, with a little, like, tropical fruit note in the back. I love it.
Yeah, the only thing I get a little bit of like young graininess. Maybe not young, I just get a little bit of a graininess. Maybe you could interpret that as like a toasted graham cracker.
You're talking about 71?
Yeah,
yes. 71. Yep. Making sure my numbers are correct.
I mean, I get a...
Yes, 71.
I wouldn't call it a grainy note. I call it a hay note. Like, it's a rye note.
Yeah, that's fair. Hay.
Yeah. Maybe a little wet grass.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, it's one that...
Spot on.
Yeah, it's one that when I smell it, you get all that fruit and... I don't know. I've gotten that on a bourbon before. But then that wet hay note comes in, and that's when I know, okay, this is a rye.
Yeah, and to me, the palate is all spiciness. And when I say spiciness, I mean baking spice. So cardamom, nutmeg.
That is delicious.
Yeah, that transition...
Of course you would think so.
From the palate to the finish is wet hay. Like when you walk into a barn or at the livestock fair, that smell you get, that is what is absolutely the finish. It is.
I was kind of visualizing like a dewy meadow, like almost like it's like.
Have you ever been in one of those, Brian?
Yes.
I saw one once on a Disney movie.
It's just like you're getting this fresh, pleasant wet grass.
Nope. I get like a musky, damp wet grass, which makes me feel like this has got some age on it.
Yeah, I don't get a lot of oak or wood, wood notes that would come with aging. I get a little bit of a dark fruit that comes back after that initial wave of the wet hay as it transitions into the palate, into the finish. I get a little bit of this dark fruit, this plum. Maybe it's like I think plum's accurate.
Yeah. Once you said plum, I was like, I think that's what that is. For a rye, I'm shocked at the lack of oomph on the finish. It's incredibly pleasant, but none of those, none of those strong rye finishes. Like this is not a strong rye finish at all.
I think it's flavorful and complex, but not powerful herbal spice. On to number 2.
Yeah. Number 2 is completely...
We're not going to have to compare these to rank them, are they? Because that's going to be tough.
I do want you to choose.
What's
the point of this?
I'm going to have to choose. No, I can't. Like, I got the nose on this second one. It's so good.
It's apricot.
So this one to me removes that hay note, and it's just lighter, more refreshing. You get more of the fruit notes, the apple, a little bit of sweet, I think, without the hay.
Mm-hmm.
From the nose alone, I would not say that this is a rye.
Yeah, I don't get that. I will say I like the first nose better. I felt like it was more in your face. There was a more...
Oh, it's in your face. If you like a bowl full of hay.
I feel like the flavor or the nose is a little muted. Like it's not as powerful of a nose. The flavors are all there. It's very complex, but it's just not as in your face.
Yeah. This one's almost like the inverse of the other. Like I feel like 71 has that strong nose, good palate, but then that complex but subtle finish. This one I feel like does the complete opposite of that, and the nose is a little bit more subdued, pleasant. Palate still great, but then I get a little bit of oomph on the finish.
So I get a lot of honey and some floral notes, but I get a big watery note. Like I feel like there should be a flavor there, but instead there's just nothing. Like I feel like a note was removed, and then it goes into the finish, which is just kind of a peppery finish. There's not a lot there. I don't know. I feel like this one's kind of missing some key points along the way that it should have.
Yeah, it's interesting to taste these. This is only the second time I've actually tasted these two. I think my opinion tonight might be different than it was the first time. I agree with you, TJ. It's like this one, particularly when you get into the palate, it just kind of leaves you a little bit watery. Like they proofed it down too much. It's just lacking. I do the finish is a bit more of maybe what we'll see what Brian says here in a second, but to me it actually coats the mouth better, and I get a lasting like a pepper burn.
Yeah,
black pepper spice. That tends to be a little bit more characteristic of particularly of a rye, but just kind of sometimes what you look for there. I do get a little bit of a light plum as it finishes that kind of cuts through, but at the end of the finish. But that's there's really not much.
See, I feel like that kind of that water, that lack of at the end of the palate to the start of the finish. I actually feel like that's where some of that like apple comes through in a more subtle way. At those points, I don't think it's lacking. I think it's almost like more of a almost like you'd have like just a dried apricot apple, more subtle than like the strong fruit note. Kind of in those moments, but definitely weaker. And then the finish is very enjoyable. Both of these would be incredibly easy drinkers. Although I think people that are needing an easy drinker probably aren't going to appreciate the complexity of these as much either.
To me, it's like you're watching a symphony or a musical piece of some sort, and there's no brass section or the drums are gone or something. It's not hitting points of my taste profile that it should be, and so I can really identify there's holes in it, and so.
Yeah, and especially compared to the first one. Actually, if I had to redo these, I would have had us taste these the other direction. Mm-hmm. You just go back to this first one, and the complexity is really delightful. And actually, as you let it sit, some of those hay notes, particularly on the nose, kind of subdue, and some of the more fruit forward notes to me are more pronounced.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. I'm gonna go with the first one as my favorite.
Unanimous?
Yeah.
Quite interesting. All right, so that is well. Let's reveal this one first. So I'm going to reveal the second one, although that's kind of going to reveal what the first one is too. So that is the George Dickel Leopold Brothers collaboration.
I was hoping you got that.
So this is about $120. Dollars, I think. Coming in at 100 proof. So this is a collaboration between George Dickel in Tennessee, of course, and Leopold Brothers, which is a distillery out of Colorado. Right? Leopold Brothers. Yeah. So this is it brings three chambered stills are known for bringing forward more, let's say, heavier whiskey, so more oils that kind of come through in that process, combined with the Dickel's a lighter column still rye whiskey. And so our opinion tonight was that column still probably watered it down a little too much. But honestly, not bad. Although at $120, I would say I'd go to something else.
Yes.
I almost pulled the trigger on that when I was actually in Colorado and saw it, and I didn't. And then I almost called my brother-in-law to make amends.
I saw it on the shelf at Benny's tonight, Brian. So if you want me to, I can get you one.
I'm really glad that you pulled the trigger on this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck.
I think I almost pulled the trigger like 4 times, and now I'm glad I did not.
Did not. Yeah, exactly. And then this other one, also you just Chuck sees fancy things in cases and he has to buy them, right? So this one is the most expensive, which was our favorite. This is Leopold Brothers 3-chamber, the holiday edition. So non-age stated, we know it's bottled and bond, so it's at least 4 years, 100 proof. So quite a flavorful rye for 100 proof, in my opinion. But at $200, where do you think value is here? It does come with a fancy box.
I mean, that adds 10% value right there.
Although it's not a tube. If it was a tube, like an E.H. Taylor.
Of the two, without knowing what they are, knowing price, anything like that, Leopold Brothers is obviously better. If I'm spending the money, and that's a factor, I'm going to go the Dickel, because I feel like that is closer to what the price should be. But I think when you factor in price, you can get better products for cheaper. And so I would say pass on both, personally.
That's where I would be if I had to rebuy. Although I am really interested in the complexity of this Leopold. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if some of that hay note would go away with age. And so I'd be interested in trying, because it seems to me it's just so close. There's a lot there that you don't get in a normal rye whiskey. But there's just, to me, that dominant hay note that you have to kind of sift through to get to those other notes, that if that went away, boy, this would be top 5 rye whiskeys.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like the Dickel, if it was $80, it would be on my shelf, and I'd feel great about that. The other one, I would easily pay $100 for. If I were to, I think, again, me spending $100, that happens a couple times a year. That would be in consideration at right around $100.
Yep.
$200, can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We're in agreement.
Yep. I mean, at $200,
I definitely judge them more critically because of price.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
but they both look cool.
Yeah, I mean,
you're glad they're on my shelf.
Yes, I am very glad they're on your shelf and not my shelf.
Welcome. And when I come to visit, I will be more than happy to help you get rid of those, if that would help.
I mean, I bet that Leopold Brothers makes one heck of an old fashioned. We should definitely give that a try.
I mean, Chuck doesn't shy away from using expensive bourbon and mixed drinks, so maybe special occasion.
Oh man! So there you go. George Dickel, Leopold Brothers versus straight Leopold Brothers. We're gonna give the win to the Leopold Brothers unanimously, but we're gonna say try it at the bar and don't buy it unless you just really have to have those bottles. The good news is, You'll be sad you paid as much as you did, but you won't be disappointed by what's in the bottle. So, once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Stay neat.
Power of bourbon.